So let's have a look at what caseloads do within Crosscare. They can be used to do a number of things, but remember that they streamline the flow of patients through the system and allow you to manage patients for both teams and for individual clinicians. Importantly, they do the administration for you automatically. But one thing to remember is that they're actually just lists of patients. These lists of patients can be used for a number of things. They can be used to manage triage queues, waiting lists. They can manage teams lists of patients where you have your clinical staff split into different teams. They can be used to manage nurse caseloads on an individual basis. And they can also be used for transferring patients between these teams and between your services. So overall, caseloads can be used for moving your patients through the system. Let's take a look at how a caseload might work and take an example of a brand new patient being referred to the hospice for the first time. So we start with the patient being referred. They may then get talked about and assessed at an MDT meeting. So we can add the referral to the MDT meeting triage caseload. The meeting may decide that they need to be seen by the home care team, and it can move them on to the home care team. In time, the home care team may move them to the daycare team, who may in turn move them on to the IPU. So all these movements through the system can be handled from caseloads. If we look at it in slightly more detail, from the MDT meeting, we might move the patient, transfer the patient, onto the home care triage queue. So the home care team can assess the patient and decide whether they want to take them on or not. They may move them to their team A or their team B or their team C, and they can also transfer the patient between teams if care changes and a transfer between the teams is necessary. Similarly, once the home care team have transferred them to team A could allocate them to Mary or Sally or June, or move them between the two. So if one goes on holiday, the care could be taken up by somebody else whilst that person's on holiday. If we look at what actually happens in some detail, so the patient is referred to the hospice and they are added to a caseload queue called MDT meeting. You can in Crosscare set up a caseload to have new referrals automatically added to it. So whenever a new referral is added, the case or the referral will be moved instantly to that queue. An email is automatically sent by the system to tell the MDT caseload owner that the patient has been added to the caseload. The patient may then be discussed at the MDT meeting and a decision may be taken, get the home care team to see the patient. So they could then transfer the patient through caseloads, and they can transfer them from the MDT meeting caseload to the home care triage caseload. So what actually happens in Crosscare is that the patient is added to the home care queue, an email is automatically sent to the home care caseload owner to say the patient has been added, and the patient is removed from the MDT caseload because they've now been dealt with. The home care team may decide to take the patient on and allocate them to Mary. So they can transfer from the triage caseload to Mary's caseload. The patient is removed from the triage queue and an email sent to Mary saying that the patient has been added to her caseload. The other thing that can happen is that the home care service can automatically be started against the referral, so nobody in admin has to remember to do that. If home care decide to transfer the patient to daycare at a later date, the patient can be added to the daycare caseload, and then an email is automatically sent to the daycare caseload owner saying that the patient has been added to their caseload. An email can go to Mary back in the home care team to say the patient has been removed from her caseload, and then the system can automatically close the home care service and open the daycare service, again doing all the administration for you. What happens when you remove somebody? So if the home care service is ended, the patient is removed from the home care caseload, an automatic email again is sent to the home care caseload owner saying the patient has been removed, and the home care service has a close date added to it straight away. So overall, Caseloads does the work for you. It will send automatic emails to the appropriate clinician saying this patient has been removed from your caseload or this patient has been added to the caseload. It updates all the admin records automatically, so it will open the new services and it will close the old services. So there's no need to pick the phone up and call all the clinicians to say this patient has moved or that patient has moved. There are no need to send any messages, no need for any internal forms, because the system will do it all for you automatically. It also makes life much easier for the clinicians. When they log in, the system takes them straight to their caseload because they probably want to look at someone they're already dealing with. So they no longer need to search for patients all the time. The system also shows them their weekly schedule of appointments and visits in the bottom half of the screen. Crosscare also makes it easier to understand what's going on with the patients and what needs to happen. So the name is highlighted in red if there are recalls or reminders to do something. The last seen date is highlighted in red if someone else has seen the patient since I last saw the patient. And the next contact date is highlighted in red if there is a booked appointment or visit for the patient with someone other than me. And if I want to see what's happened, I can just click on a patient and the system will show me a review topic, for example, of the recent entries in the bottom half of the screen so I can catch up with the patient's treatment. If I double click on a patient, it will take me to the normal clinical desktop. So Crosscare makes it much easier to keep track of your workload as a clinician. There are a couple of considerations to take into account when implementing Caseloads, as they can be a little painful to set up in the first place. You'll need to create the teams and you'll need to say who's in each team. You'll also need to say who can add, transfer and remove to and from each caseload. It is a little painful, but you don't necessarily want a free-for-all where anybody can add or transfer or remove people from your caseloads. Those facilities are a little hidden away and they're not that easy to find. The other thing to think about is there's not much point implementing caseloads in isolation. The real benefits come from when you move patients between your services and your teams. So if you just implement it for one team or one service, you don't take advantage of all those benefits and you don't gain anything from it. Have a look at some of the other lessons to see just how Caseload works inside of Crosscare.